Mona continued flipping through the pages of the latest news magazine. She looked around and was amazed at the calmness of the editorial hall. She leaned her back on the backrest of the small chair she was sitting on. She continued flipping through the headlines until she reached a page with a large picture of one of the Cairo massacres of animals. She stopped, took a deep breath and closed her eyes as she took it out slowly, opened them and looked at her name, Mona Abu Zaid, written in 16 font size. She smiled as she contemplated it and felt on the paper as if she could sense the texture of her name on it. Destiny led her, after her ambition, to Her Kabar monthly magazine, which she joined about 3 years ago. Professor Rafat Marzouk, the editor-in-chief of the magazine, agreed to appoint her as a journalist under training for 6 months, without the right to claim any material rights during them. She agreed without hesitation, as if she was confident of her success. Rafat Marzouk sent her to work under the leadership of Noha Morgan, who is at least 5 years older than her and with more than 7 years of experience. Noha worked for this magazine since she was a student in the Faculty of Mass Communication in the 3rd grade, and in a few weeks she proved her existence with bold articles and investigations, which made all the senior journalists attribute her to her and announce their adoption of her. Her success secured a place for her in advance before her graduation, and her status, value and salary increased after that. She did not stop there, extending a helping hand to Mustafa Daoud and Samiha Abdullah. Her close classmates at the college mediated for them to appoint them to the magazine, and in honor of her and despite her young age, Rafat Marzouk agreed to appoint them on probation for a period of 6 months, but once the 6 months were over they would have been dismissed had it not been for her intervention once again and her intercession for them, so that the editor-in-chief agreed to appoint them to journalists with the reward, which they did not get them at least. She was distinguished by Mona Al-Bemanabag, embraced her and tried hard to help her in her journalistic investigations, using all her knowledge inside and outside the press milieu to carry out bold, strong and shocking investigations, the last of which was an investigation on the Cairo massacres and the negatives of those places, in which Mona collected her information from more than one source: the butchers and their boys, the working veterinarians with slaughterhouses, butchers, owners of fresh meat shops, customers and their own experiences with different types of meat. She succeeded, as usual, and Noha was happy for her. But it remains a lump in the throat of Mustafa and Samiha al-Muhani. Mona read her investigation again and again, looking at her small picture above her name, smiling confidently. She flipped through the pages of the magazine again. An advertisement from the Ministry of the Interior announcing an opportunity to apply for a guard position in a police station in Giza Governorate caught her attention. She contemplated the advertisement and the blue Ministry of Interior logo in the middle of it, raised her eyes away from it, narrowed her eye sockets slightly as if she was focusing to aim a shot at a target that only she could see, closed the magazine, picked up her small handbag from above the desk, opened it and made sure that she always had the notebook with her pen in the middle. The bullets, she recorded the center address in it, and returned it to the bag, and she was about to leave had it not been for Samiha's entry. Her sharp looks towards her stopped her. She returned to sit quietly, watching her cautiously. As usual, Samiha went forward and headed towards a small office in the corner of the editing hall, perhaps the smallest of all those present. She put her golden keychain on the desk, took off her handbag from her shoulder, and before putting it on the desk herself, she examined it and called loudly on the vagina of the worker responsible for cleaning the hall. Altar, who is the one who customarily prepares drinks for young and novice editors, who are often crowded with the editorial hall almost all the time throughout the day. He took it upon himself to buy food of any kind, type, or form for young journalists after taking a simple commission of no more than £5 and no less. About £2 for each request requested by any of the magazine's journalists. Magazine in the same month in which he was appointed as its editor-in-chief, and the current editor-in-chief, Mr. Shihab Alabama Bagadli, preceded the appointment by a year and 3 months completely. However, they all have all the love and respect for him, although he is a worker in the magazine and they are journalists, but they cannot deny his favor to them. They drank drinks from his hand that he prepared himself, and they were not held accountable and paid for them due to lack of funds. He never complained or prevented anyone from asking for what he wanted, even if debts accumulated on him. Yes, every penny is written on his customers, but he does not ask them until they pay willingly after that, until he became the icon of the magazine and the tacit owner of the editorial off. They drank drinks from his hand that he prepared himself, and they were not held accountable and paid for them due to lack of funds. He never complained or prevented anyone from asking for what he wanted, even if debts accumulated on him. Yes, every penny is written on his customers, but he does not ask them until they pay willingly after that, until he became the icon of the magazine and the tacit owner of the editorial. What is really wrong with him is not his poor hearing, which was sharp in the past, but his bad appearance and neglect of his dress, although many journalists who have become stars of society now, including those who present programs on satellite channels or radio stations, give him many gifts in the form of elegant clothes, and they sometimes even give him t-shirts from famous and expensive international brands, but between himself and himself he refuses to wear them, and his justification is somewhat logical, because if he wears these expensive shirts and pants of international brands, he must lose his customers among the journalists al-Qartihi, who are the majority of the workers in this hall, at least at the beginning of their. But where do these luxurious pieces of clothing of different colors and tastes go? A question that only a young journalist who is famous among his colleagues for his exaggerated elegance, despite his delicate condition, will go. Ancient in economics, society, philosophy, and perhaps also in religion, passing through the vaults of history and the vaults of geography. Samiha stood behind the desk, refusing to put her Chanel leather bag on a dusty desk covered in this way. She called Farai again, knowing that he would not hear her, but she was determined to call him to say what she wanted to convey to those around her in the hall, and since now there is only Mona, and she appeared out of nowhere in this magazine to grow and grow suddenly, and her image and name topped her investigations in a short and record period, which raises her disgust and rage. Even one letter in an article, but with the help of a huge advertising campaign funded by her father, she moved from being a journalist with a reward to a working journalist. Looked at the new issue of the magazine, and caught a glimpse of Mona's name. She also saw her picture smiling, that smile that she always describes as a yellow smile. She looked at her as she lamented, and looked at her from the top of her head to the soles of her feet. In the editing room. I don't know how people live in such filth. Then she looked at Mona again and wiped her index finger on the desktop and raised it in front of her eyes and said, pointing to her, "Look at the amount of dirt on the desk. If I put my Chanel bag on it, it will get dirty. Also, the sleeves of my Christian Dior blouse will get dusty, and this blouse is expensive for me." She was silent for a while, waiting for Mona's reaction, who fixed her gaze on her eyes, and her face did not develop any reaction. I do not mean the price tag, on the contrary, it is not expensive, its price does not exceed £3,000 only, but I am proud of it because it was Bobby who bought it for me from Italy on his last trip. Mona did not move an inch, and the expression of her rigid face did not change, as if she was without feeling, as she looked into Samiha's eyes directly, who continued her speech saying, "Farah is a careless man who does not care about his work. If he had worked in one of my father's companies, he would have supported him long ago. Or perhaps he would have transferred him to one of his distant factories as punishment. Why do you look at me like?" Mona smiled and signaled to her to continue. Samiha furrowed her eyebrows, asking about the meaning of her gesture. She gave a short, semi-faint laugh and said, "Because you have not yet talked about the déjà vu shoes, nor the Da Vinci pants, and of course you must tell me about your Audi car, which you do not like, especially when you compare it to your brother's Lamborghini. Believe in God, Mani. I must ask Baba to buy a new car. Think of a distinctive brand with me." Mona laughed longer this time and said while looking at the magazine on her desk, "Forget the cars, dresses, parties, and travels, and get straight into the matter, Seth." Samiha realized that she would not be able to provoke her. Her deceit did not fall on her despite her success with more than one colleague before, but she clearly and insolently invites her to fight in a battle that she knows very well that she will lose. However, she will not mind fighting it with all force and ferocity. She put her bag on the chair and headed towards the desk behind which Mona is sitting, and picking up the issue of the magazine with her fingertips knows exactly where the investigation of that idiot boasting lies. With words she writes on a white sheet of paper and then sends them to be approved by the editor-in-chief so that she can live as if she were a legendary. She flipped through the pages of the magazine quickly, her gaze fixed on a picture of Mona, who was about to burn her papers. She said, pointing to any line in the investigation, "Look here, this sentence is interpolated, and what else? The method is disjointed and incoherent and has nothing to do with the subject of the investigation. Moreover, the subject itself is absurd and unimportant, and no one will be interested in reading what is happening in the slaughterhouses. What is exciting about this? Frankly, the whole subject is..." Mona breathed a sigh of relief and let out a strong exhale and stood up, took the number of the magazine from her hand, smiled comfortably and said, "Praise be to God, your shipment expired early this month and will not be renewed until next month when my new investigation comes out, so you get angry and start talking about your dress, your perfume, your car, your father's factories, and about the astronomical number with which he bought a villa in Paris. Then you come back again and say the same thing about an investigation, saying what I... Yes, look here, this sentence is inserted, and the style is disjointed and incoherent and has nothing to do with the subject of the investigation. Then the topic itself is absurd and unimportant and no one will be interested in reading it. Frankly, the whole topic is bad. I memorize them by heart, I hear them from you every month." Samiha went to her office in the corner of the hall, picked up her bag from the chair, opened it and took out a paper napkin from it. She said while wiping the desktop, "Did you know that Dr. Shadi Mashawar, the former chairman of the board of directors of the foundation, issued the decision to appoint me? I know this very well, but what motivates the chairman of the board of directors of an institution that publishes 4 weekly newspapers, 1 daily, 2 fortnightly magazines, and 2 monthly magazines? White paper. Because he knows my potential very well. And how do you know her? My dad told him." The daughter of the famous businessman Abdullah Alabama Shutari finished wiping the surface of her desk, looked at the white paper napkin and did not find any change in it, but she threw it in a trash can near her. "I am a loser and she is rude, arrogant, and the daughter of 60 dogs.